Hey everyone, welcome to our very special fourth episode of Warped Wednesday. This is your host, Mike Pestilens, with Wallace O'Donnell, ready to bring you all the secrets from deep inside the Immaterium. Wallace, my friend, how are you doing today?
You know, Mike, never been better.
Never been better. Wow. Okay.
Never. I got back from a very lovely vacation and showed off a little bit of that in the last episode, if anyone's
Yeah.
curious.
Looked beautiful.
It was. I had a huge layover. In Korea.
Wait, how long?
It was about a 16-hour layover.
16-hour layover. That's not a layover, that's a vacation.
It was a vacation in of itself. Now,
Yeah.
they have this whole lounge area. I was in Seoul.
Yeah.
And the lounge area that they had for transfer flights was larger than like most airports are. Like it was a huge area. There's a bunch of stores in. So I'm tired and I want a coffee. So I get in line at a Dunkin' Donuts in Korea. I was like, well, Dunkin' Donuts, like most places there, wouldn't take your card. You had to have money, and I didn't want to go through the process of figuring out how to get that.
Sure.
It's only the hours. So it was like, Dunkin' Donuts, that's an international brand. They'll probably take my card.
Can't go wrong.
So I got in line. I was like, Duncan, he's going to come through for me. And I was in line. There was a gentleman in front of me. He was very nice. He was a Korean man who's in a full business suit. He was very well dressed. And he kept talking to me, but he didn't really speak too much English, like a little bit. So, you know, we were shooting the breeze in line somewhat.
Sure.
And he gets up to the counter at the Dunkin' Donuts and he buys a hot dog. And he turns to me after he buys the hot dog and he gets his coffee or whatever. And he hands me the hot dog and he says, Americans like hot dogs.
No way. No way.
And I was like, I don't know, that should be offensive, but you're right. I like hot dogs, so I got a free hot dog out of the situation.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. That was on the trip back. But unfortunately, I didn't bring a second Knight's Codex to read, so I very quickly ran out of hobbying things to do on that plane ride.
Oh, you could have brought the Imperial Knight's Codex if you want to fall asleep on the flight.
Ugh. You know, I actually did read that codex.
Oh, yeah?
It's different. It's very, very different than Chaos Knights. Like, Chaos Knights really seem to push you in a couple of directions, whereas Imperial Knights, they do as well, but they're different direct. Like, they really want you to have more big knights.
Yeah.
Based on
is just like all the little angry war dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chaos Knights intrinsically make you feel like you want to play War Dog faction. So anyways, not as much hobbying done up until today. I've been focused on travel, but now that I'm back, my focus goes immediately back to my Atlantic City Open list.
That's
trying to get
week, right? That's really close.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone for that one here pretty soon. So I got 60 more goats burning a hole through my hobby table that I gotta get done sometime in the next couple of days. So
okay, cool. No, that's awesome. Well, good luck with all the goats. And remember, contrast is your friend, not your enemy.
Oh yeah. No, I have a bowl. I'm dipping them.
Dip method, nice. Then you spin them around.
So what's been going on your side of the
Cool.
the hobby track there, Mike?
I've got some. Oh, and the camera's not working at all. I think Warp Talons are looking amazing in the leaks. And I'm like, wow, the next codex is probably gonna want me to play Warp Talons. Well, jokes on GW, I have a bunch of Warp Talons anyway, because I think they're just super, super cool. So I'm working on getting all of my backlog of Warp Talons painted up. I've got about 25 Warp Talons built. I've got an additional box, which I can make 5 more from. So yeah, just really excited to get working on those. Going to go for a nice kind of Black Legion scheme with just enough things changed up to maintain some Legion ambiguity, so I can run them as whatever. Just really excited. Have you seen the new league talking about they're going to get an ability to prevent fallback, which I think, like, having played Slaanesh Demons, that's one of the best rules in the game. And I already have so much experience like getting the most out of that mechanic. So just getting it on Warp Talons for free, like, I can't even think about how exciting that army is going to be to play.
Well, let me start off with the fact that I have actually played with no fallback warp talons before. They exist in the current codex, but you have to be.
Nox.
You have to be a Night Lord player.
You do.
So
which is not really a downside. Like all the coolest people I know play Night Lords. So
they have a deep toolbox, and that was one of the reasons why they had a deep toolbox. Is their no fallback stratagem was very powerful.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, super good. So I was a huge fan of that, especially back in the day when you weren't restricted to having to have a detachment be all one chapter.
Yeah.
You could bring like a squad of warp talons that were Night Lords, and you'd be able to use Night Lord strats on it and stuff. It was weird. It was a weird era.
Yeah.
But yeah, that when that was played with, it was very powerful. I felt it was one of the reasons that really pushed you to want to play Night Lords. So now it's kind of like a utilitarian thing that anybody's able to do.
Yeah.
That just seems pretty crazy, especially looking at the new profiles on a lot of things. I'm pretty impressed with the stat lines. We'll see about the points.
Yep, just rolling up with a cash 5 attacks like it's nothing. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Because I think, yeah, they definitely have a great toolbox right now. So the fact they're actually having some good data sheets to go with that toolbox, they're going to lose a few things, but gain a lot too. Yeah, Night Lords are basically the Alpha Legion of CSM in terms of having a deep toolbox. So I'm excited to run more of them. So speaking of leaks, speaking of future information, what I really want to talk about with you today, Wallace, is the new previewed mission changes that are going to just entirely shake up the game. I'm sure you've seen the leaks about the CP changes and mission changes.
You're talking about the mission changes and the CP stuff?
Yeah, the new Nephilim packet. I think it's currently Nachmund. They always change around. I think it was Octarius last edition, or earlier in the edition. So we have another made-up copyrightable name by GW for this mission pack. What are your initial thoughts?
So right off the bat, the mission changes.
Right off the bat, another Night Lords reference. You're on fire, Walls.
Like that. Yeah, the mission changes. I'm kind of skeptical of, not because I don't think that they could exist, but I just want to see how. I'm not crazy about the idea of CP being gained being something that's a secondary. I'd rather keep my victory points and my command points separate. I think it's weird to mix them, and it makes a lot of like weird decision making stuff.
Well, part of my worry is it's going to lead to some snowbally games where you start scoring like your secondaries early, they don't, and now you also have more CP to keep scoring more secondaries. Again, part of it is, I'll just say as a caveat before we keep going, I'm actually not a big fan of discussing leaks too seriously, just because you're not going to get the full picture, and you never know it's like 100% accurate. But I mean, the leaks have been pretty darn accurate overall this edition. So we think at least like the big picture, while we don't have the full exact details, we definitely have the big picture enough to talk about it. So just recap for anyone that hasn't seen it yet. The main change is armies are now going to start with 6 CP instead of the usual 12. And you're still paying for detachments. You're still paying for any pre-game stratagems. You're also paying for warlord traits and relics, even the base ones you used to get for free. In exchange, you're probably gaining around 2 a turn. With, I think, in addition, you gain the ability to gain some through the mission. Now, what's interesting is I wonder if they're going to cap it, because currently you gain 1 CP outside of that one, and that's it. Any source. Do you think they're going to cap it to you only gain 1 CP now, or you can like stack multiple sources? How do you think that's going to work?
So based on what we've been shown through what are verified leaks for the Legions of Votan, because those leaks were verified. That's the.
But there's pictures of it. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, the CP change ones is guy on Reddit says, which is not super reliable.
Shout out to all the guys on Reddit out there. I don't fully trust you, but you're doing the Dark God's work. Keep it up.
You are. So that is first and foremost. Now, what I will say is, even if it is not true, there is a kernel of truth in what was said, in that we know that CP is changing, because that's something that the company Warhammer has said, and they revealed it in Warhammer World. They've talked about, we are going to about 6 CP. We're going to be gaining probably 2 CP a turn is the way that it sounds like it's going to work. So the crux of the issue is going to be the same, which is we're starting with less CP now. How does that influence the game? On the note of if we think that CP stacking will be allowed, I don't think it will be, because those League of Votann leaks came out. One of them references that one of the abilities they have allows you to gain CP irrespective of that other rule. So if there this future codex after they've released Warzone Nephilim, why would it reference a previous iteration of a rule? I think we can reasonably say CP stacking won't be allowed, but the ability to generate CP early in the game is probably going to be more important. For a lot of armies, not for every army. There are some armies that can just say, whatever, this doesn't really impact me, which is always an interesting place to be in the game. But any spending pre-game CP is taking a number of warlord traits or relics. They're going to be hurting because of this. For instance, I'm bringing to ACO, it's 1,000 Suns list. I have a lot of different warlord traits and relics in there. Would not be able to, I literally wouldn't be able to play the same list after the Warzone pack. So just something to consider is that it's going to change the way that we build our lists. It encourages you to put everything into one battalion or one detachment, which I think is kind of the direction the game's been going for a while. You don't like souping. So
you pay for all your specialty detachments. Honestly, at this point, I kind of wish they would just bring back force org charts. Just let people, they clearly have one way they want us to play, and that's fine. Just make it clear. Okay, so let's talk about Chaos Army by Chaos Army, because some Chaos Armies, we can agree, are impacted way, way more than others. Let's talk maximum pain. Let's make the Dark Gods happy. Walls, which Chaos Army is in the most pain as a result of these changes?
That's a tough question.
It's not a tough question. It's demons. But you can keep going.
Well, demons, sort of. Because the thing is, I hear demons. I agree that demons are hurt, but only some demon lists are hurt.
Sure.
So I feel like demons can kind of shift their way around those changes. For instance, Disciples of Bellicor, it's more or less fine. It actually might even benefit them if we end up generating more CP. It's just possible that when GW comes out with this, there's more ways to generate. Mental interrogation giving you CP, if that's true, that's a stratagem, or not stratagem, the secondary I was taking often. So
so the rumor change, for anyone that doesn't know, is psychic interrogation. The change is going to be most likely that you roll 2d6 after psychic interrogation casts, and if you beat the target's leadership, you get to go ahead and generate a CP, which you're rolling. There's lots of ways to debuff leadership in Chaos. You're probably rolling 2d6 over an 8 or something, which will happen about a third of the time. So you're going to gain or average around 2 CP a game ahead of where you were before. Now, part of it, because your Disciples list, you often talked about you would front load strats turn 1. You'd have the Bloodletters come in, double fight, potentially fight on death. But again, so
that play, but that play never felt like it was crazy good. If I'm gonna choosing between fighting on death or fighting twice, I'm gonna make sure I leave myself with enough CP to do that. But I don't know what traits or relics I absolutely need in that army. So considering the fact that so many other armies are getting a lot worse because of this, I feel DOB kind of makes it away kind of I wouldn't say scot-free. It's losing some stuff. It's losing some losing some command point based stuff. But it's doing it in a way that isn't super painful.
Well, I guess my question for you, currently, really, what relics and warlord traits have you been buying? Because what's always interesting about Disciples is it feels like the free relic you get was kind of wasted anyway. You're bringing the Forbidden Gem, which is useful, don't get me wrong. But some people take the Endless Grimoire on the Changecaster, and I'm just what are we doing here, folks?
The Changecaster variant doesn't use relics really. The Epitome variant, or the Epitome variant, uses Forbidden Gem very effectively. It's a way of saying no to things like Troop Masters with Foot in the Future and Flying Hive Tyrants and that kind of stuff. So it definitely is worth that CP. and I'll probably spend it for Forbidden Gem. I don't think that Bellacor's Warlord trait is worth a CP if it ends up costing any. And
okay, that's the take. That's a hot take.
But the thing is, like, in the game, the way that the game plays, people
Yeah.
always the way horrors work. There are very few situations where you're shooting 30 horrors at one thing, and those shots matter for more than a few
Sure.
wounds.
Well, let's talk about turn one Bellaports of Bloodletters. They're going to miss the wound. I mean, you're only rerolling ones, but if they have a minus to hit, it's really good. Or if like a squad gets wounded, then you want to double fight and you're under 20.
Yeah. Like, there's just not a lot of scenarios where you're shooting 30 pinks at something and it's even worth it. Like, if you fire that, maybe do a couple wounds. Like,
sure. Agreed.
And those things are obscured, so you can only shoot it with so many. And you also want to string those pinks out when you Belleport them. It's not like you're putting them all in a brick in one spot. So it doesn't tangibly happen in the game as much as people say it does. And so I don't think I would actually spend a CP on it. I don't think it's actually worth it. So that's just an example of something. Like, again, I don't feel like Disciples lose as much. And since I also believe that Disciples is the best way to play demons, I think demons lose competitively. The people who get absolutely hosed by this are kind of the people that are bringing the more narrative demon lists, that are bringing like a detachment of this and a detachment of that.
Chaos Undivided. If you want to run like a Slanesh detachment and then like an Undivided detachment and have like the Exalted Lord of Change, which now costs you 3 CP to bring. That's painful. Or like those Slanesh lists where you basically have like 3 Exalted, keepers, like 2 detachments. I mean, they still technically work. Well, hold on, let's actually talk about that. Those lists are probably buying a patrol. That's 2 CP. You're probably buying 3 Exalteds. Start with 5 CP. I mean, but what CP are you spending turn 1? Like Warp Surge is like the worst strategy in the game, so don't do that. So like, what are you doing? Like, I think that list will actually still be able to function. I think demons are in a bad spot with this change, but still playable.
Well, you're grabbing a relic, you're grabbing 3 exalted traits, and you're grabbing a patrol.
So you start with 0 CP. Okay, cool.
You start with 0 CP, and that also means you're not bringing Bloodletters, which kind of are like your best unit.
Sure, I'm talking like pure Slanesh lists. They can still function.
Yeah, gotcha. Those look fine. Like,
it's tougher to like take Rod with like units of Furies you want to reserve for a CP. But I mean, don't do that anyway. It's not very good.
Yeah, like you're not playing the mission anyways, man. You want to run your guys at them. That's fine.
Yeah.
I go back to the point of like what I think are the best ways to play demons are not really affected by this change, which means it's a buff.
Bloodletter bombs are affected, which I know we both love with like all of our hearts. We think they're so good, so underrated. But let me talk to you. Say there's some mad lad out there. In fact, one of our patrons the other day we were talking about running this style of list as one of the options. Was if you want to run a pure corn list, you're in a world of hurt now. Just an absolute world of hurt. Like, I mean, pure corn, I don't want to say like
all the hurt before. You're in the
That's true. I'm so tired of seeing 3D printed Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand on every top table. Finally, we'll see something else besides pure corn demons. But I will say
all these whack players with their Ultramarines painted demons come to the table. Same corn demons.
Just sticking some wings on Gilliman and saying he's a demon prince. I'm tired of seeing it. Tired of corn players taking over the tournament scene. I will say though, the one bright side. Remember how when the nerf to artillery came out, guards specifically got an exemption because they were an old codex that just really didn't function without artillery. I wonder if demons will get the same cutout or CP changes or some sort of change there, like they get their CP, additional CP at the start or something, just because so many lists literally don't function. And actually, if you're listening, if you want to do a public service today, if you want to email GW very politely in a very friendly way, if you want to say like, hey, you're concerned about how this change will affect demons, they do listen to feedback as long as it's respectful. So if you want to send an email to the FAQ team or the rules team, feel free to do that. Again, please be respectful. Please be polite. Don't say I sent you. I don't want them getting angry at us. But I think it's still early enough. We can still get some feedback in. And there's a chance we get an exemption. That's all I'm going to say.
So,
happened before.
Again, cycling back to how are different factions affected? I'm looking at it from the lens of how is the best version of those factions affected. I don't think demons are affected if you're playing Disciples, and I also believe that Disciples is far and away the best way to play demons. However, it's also hardest way to play demons, which means naturally it's not going to be the one that is like everybody's take.
Well,
and if you're
that's
bringing
slowly changing. Partly because of Warphammer, we're slowly changing the popularity of Disciples there, but we're getting there. Still, people still love their Monster Mash, and honestly, it warms my heart to see like 4 or 5 greater demons on the table. It's always gonna be beautiful.
it's cool.
Yeah.
But and like if you're looking at the best chaos players like Brian Malpass or myself or whatever, we are placing with the demon list, that demon list, or Mike Gay,
yeah.
When any one of the boys is placing with chaos demons, usually that chaos demon list is Disciples, and there's a reason for that. It's an army of 9th edition rules. We don't have 9th edition rules right now.
Well,
so
one of the best demon players you forgot to mention, I'm sitting across from you, was going to take Disciples to Seattle if I had more time to paint, more space to carry models. I just want to bring a Lord of Skulls, man. It looks cool. It looks cute. I just finished painting all the skulls. Gosh darn, I was going to bring a Lord of Skulls. Let's talk other Chaos armies. We've talked about Thousand Suns. We'll get back to them. Let's talk Death Guard, because I think they're going from bad to worse here. Because now they have to pay for their free contagion.
Yes, true.
Yes.
So you're doing the contagion, you're doing Arch Contaminator, you're doing Stinky guy.
Stinky boy, yeah.
Yeah. And so those plus a relic means you're starting the game with 2 CP.
You're often bringing a Vanguard if you're running the army correctly.
No. I'm sorry to say it, you're moving to a battalion.
Wallace sent me a list, which was a Death Guard Vanguard a while back. But we're not going to talk about that. Now, I will say battalion's correct, so I think Poxwalkers are great. You bring 3 Pox, 3 Possessed, calls a day. There's still the temptation. People like their Vanguards, people like their Epidemia Spearheads, which I'm not saying they're great lists. I'm saying they're fun lists that people like running. All the Demon Engines in the Spearhead with summoning Epidemius. That list, I think, is in a really bad spot. But, I mean, it wasn't in a good spot before, so, it'd be what it'd be.
That list we talked about on the Nurgle episode, I believe that was our episode 2. With the
episode 3, the blessed number. Keep going.
Oh, that's right. So that particular list, honestly, isn't really affected.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's doing the same thing. It's not super CP hungry, so you kind of core stratagems you're using. That list is still fine, and I still think that's the best way to play Death Guard. There's options out there. Like, again, people are like, I don't have 30 Possessed lying around, or I don't want to buy 30 Possessed and try that list. That's been the main thing that I've heard when I've talked to other Death Guard players, is like they just don't have the models. I want to put those models together for that, which I appreciate. Like, I'm a Demons player, so I already had all those models. But if you don't want to do that, like, you can get around the same effects with like 3 Rhinos filled with Plague Marines with decent melee weapons.
Yeah,
like
that's very underrated. Plus, if you don't have the funds to buy 30 Possessed, there's a wide variety of white collar crimes that aren't really prosecuted. I'm just saying, there's a lot of ways to use money.
There's so many ways to skin a foetid blight drone. So
absolutely. I don't want to see what's underneath the skin, but there's something juicy down there. I know that for sure. Let's talk Chaos Knights, which I think are low-key in a little bit of a hurting spot with this, because the best lists are often starting with 6 or 7 CP. The upside is they don't really have to spend a lot of CP early. Unless their CP is spent turn 2 and 3 when they're really getting in the mix, throwing punches, and they'll have a pretty amount. Pretty solid.
So
then.
Chaos Knights are currently the best way to play Chaos. Thousand Suns used to be, but I think since the Chaos Knight Codex has come out and people are starting to learn that Codex, it's very clearly like incredibly powerful. I would actually say that we've yet to find the exact build for it, but we're getting close. And the build that we're seeing kind of come together is one that I would put in the like S tier. Like, it's one I would be like, yeah, I could see that win a major. That list does have a lot of pregame CP you're spending. Like Mike said, you're ending up with like 7, but also it has a plan for those CP that it starts with. So it does put you in a weird spot if you are condensed to 6, because that means you're going to be foregoing some traits and stuff.
So one trick I really enjoyed I've seen pop up in a few lists, so the word is starting to get out. But you bring a super heavy auxiliary, which is, again, you get refunded your CP, or 3 CP, it only costs 1 CP. You make that unit like a different detachment, or Red Blade, for example, can get some really good juice out of that. So I think that's trick, probably just you take that away. You probably take away probably some of the relics you're buying. You still want to buy as many warlord traits as you can just to get more characters if you're running a summoning list, which you probably should be. But I think that the relics are going away. But the relics, honestly, there's a lot of complete misses in there. There's very few relics you need, so I think that's still a perfectly fine option.
You want the Hound of Helms, the Helm of Hounds.
Yeah, you want the puppy hat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good option. But other than that, there's really not a lot of stuff you need. So I think Chaos Knights are in a good spot. I think that,
like everything, they're going to be slightly adjusted, but I think they're fine.
Yeah.
I think Thousand Suns got the gut punch, honestly. Of all of them, of all of the ones we've listed, Thousand Suns as a faction are the one that are least able to shift around it without something. Thousand Suns,
because I think a lot of the optimized lists like bring little tech pieces like Seeker of Shadows, Zangor Shaman. That's a CP you really don't want to spend. Or they're often buying multiple warlord traits to make their casting more reliable, or doing the Athenian scrolls and warlord trait trick.
And you're also just peeing out like a million CP turn one. A lot of the games.
Well, counterpoint, Thousand Suns do have, just like the Tallyman, they have a very reliable way to get CP with their Cabal, which is a really getting through a turn. So if you can just get through that turn one, I think they're kind of in clear sailing from there.
But you're no longer able to do -1 damage turn one on top of your
on a big squad, yeah.
Wound, on top of your Great Sorcerer, on top of a bunch of characters with different traits. Sure. The thing is, like, in what we just talked about, none of those factions that we listed changed in tiering. I feel like all of them stayed around the same.
Okay, well, but what matchups these days are you worried about where you're actually using the -1 damage turn one? Tiered is probably not, because their shooting is mostly 4 damage that scares Terminators, so it doesn't matter.
No, it's tiered.
Eldar mostly high volume. Yeah, but you can hide from them. You can hide from them early on well enough.
Yeah, but if you're bringing like 30 Scarabs, you're not hiding.
Well, don't do that. Bring 20 and bring more tech pieces and win more games. Well, can't play the bad list anymore. Oh no. What matchups out there are there? Like Knights, I mean, maybe it depends on their exact shooting, but Knights have a lot of 1 damage. If they bring Gatling cannons, they're probably a bad list anyway.
Well, it's the autocannons are damage 3. Knock them down to 2.
2 ups to cover. Yeah, I agree. It depends on just how many they have. But again, they're slow. You can play angles. You've got options.
Right. Yeah, my point more is like you didn't get to do those things freely before, but now it's like turn 1, you have to play way more conservatively. I do think Thousand Suns change in my tiering slightly with the changes.
So I think they're currently A+ tier. I think they go from A+ to A. Where would you put them?
That's where I was going to put them.
Okay.
They go from A+ down to like A tier, which doesn't feel like a big shift, but you'll notice it at top tables. Like I feel like the best Thousand Suns players were the ones that got hit the hardest by it. So Thousand Suns got kind of a gut punch. For instance, again, my list completely unplayable with those changes. I would have to pull out most of my characters.
Wise players could argue your list isn't playable right now, but that's a separate discussion. We'll see. We'll see after ACO. Honestly, I think it's super underrated. I'm really excited to see how it does. I think you're going to have
the list I have would absolutely demolish an RT. A GT, yeah. I do okay with. A major, I guess we'll see, folks.
Spoiler alert, there's nothing that can't demolish RTTs if you know what you're doing, but that's a separate discussion. But yeah, I think your list, especially it's like a high player skill list. I think the player skill there as 2 of the best Chaos players here. I think we can agree. It's a list that has so many tricks, and I'm really excited to see how you do. So let's see, any Chaos army we haven't talked about. Chaos Space Marines, maybe at the same time, like they're going to have a new codex around the same time, so I'm not going to stress about them. All I'm going to say is I'm super excited to make them switch from a faction that relies on CP to a faction with actual data sheets. That'll be a very welcome change. Speaking of RTTs, there's one RTT left before the Chaos Space Marines Codex comes out. And honestly, I'm thinking about bringing my Emperor's Children out for one last hurrah. Just load up. I think there's gonna be a lot of knights. And the one good thing about Emperor's Children was knights were always a buy around. So I'm thinking about just bringing Emperor's Children to the RTT next few weeks, just loading up with like a big brick of 20 noise marines, just saying, all right, guys, one last hurrah, let's go out with a bang, and just tabling knights turn 2. That'll be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, Emperor's Children just destroy knights.
It's not even a game. I'll genuinely feel bad.
Put in front of me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. Like, I'll show you a magic trick. You want to see this knight disappear?
Slams their table.
Yeah. Well, or like I shoot my brave group of 20 Noise Marines with vets, +1 strength and damage, and I just one shot a knight. And they're like, oh my god, I think I've lost the game. I'm like, well, I feel really bad for what I'm about to do, but that's just the first half of that. So I mean, we'll see. I think we'll have a good time. But it's one of those things. I don't want any cast players listening to this to get discouraged, because again, we don't have the full picture. Plus, there's always ways to adapt. Like, we've been dealing with, frankly, a lot of unfavorable metas and rules changes over 9th edition. What's one more at this point, you know?
And again, what I'll say, like, think about it like this. Yeah, it hurts for your faction. And you'll know how it hurts because you play that faction. So you're already going to be aware of, oh man, I can't do this anymore. And that's going to feel bad. However, you have to keep in mind that everybody else with their faction feels the same way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Put that in context in your brain. It's like, yeah, this is changing, but how much is this changing for me? Like I said, like with the example of DOB, in a weird sense, I think Disciples kind of get buffed by this, because as somebody that's played other like Space Marine factions, for instance, like I don't know what I'm going to do. All my stuff like just dropped off the face of the earth. I'm going to have to completely change the way that I build my army.
I will say, in 3 armies, I always saw bring an extra patrol and buy a load up on Warlord Case and Relics, Tyranids, Tau, Eldar.
Yeah.
I think the meta's going to be wide open, at least for a while, until people figure out how to adapt. And here at Warhammer, we're going to bring you all the best ways to adapt. And we're going to keep waging this long war, man. We've waged it for 10,000 years. What's one month more?
Oh man, and I heard on a Tyranid server they were talking about dropping the extra that counts as extra models with OBSEC Warlord trait on the Parasite of Mortex and to the CP. And if they did that, oh boy, sky's the limit for where you can take demons.
Yeah, Tyranid's players, yeah. They're like, wow, you know, it'd be really cool if we like just lost the ability to win close games in exchange for getting 1 more CP. That's a great trade-off. We got to drop the Parasite. Yeah, any Tyranids players, please drop the Parasite. Please don't do that. You need that extra CP to reroll some damage roll or something. You need that CP. Don't take the Parasite.
Yeah, you need it for Scorch Bugs with those gaunts that you definitely brought.
Oh, of course. Cool. Well, on that note, thank you so much to everyone that joined us today. Again, roles change, the meta changes. Here at Warphammer, we're always going to keep waging the long war. It's been Mike with Wallace signing off, and we'll see all of you beautiful people bright and early next Wednesday. Bye, Wallace.
Bye.